Hi, everybody. Welcome to the WVHuddle.com Prep Football Podcast, the championship edition of the podcast. It's the Wednesday before the Super Six. Of course, things get going in Wheeling on Friday with the Class AA state championship between Bridgeport and Tulsa. We'll get into the matchups in a little bit, but first, something we've harped on all season long. Of course, I'm Tom Bragg, joined by Derek Taylor, assistant sports editor at the Gazette-Mail, and Ryan Pritt, Prep reporter. No Rick Ryan today, but we'll try to get through. Anyway, so something that we've kind of harped on all season long, and for several seasons, you and I with this, is that, it's really, really hard to win the Kennedy Award as the state's top player if your team's not playing in the semifinals.
Right.
And this year was kind of an interesting scenario in that it was as wide open a race as we've seen in some time, and it seemed like all of the guys, for the most part, that were still in the running were still playing in the semifinals. And I thought that just with what happened, the way that things went down in those games, particularly the AAA games, it kind of flipped everything on its ear compared to, say, if you had to vote last week, it might have been drastically different than if you voted this week. Just kind of start at the top. We've talked Cody Mitchell up pretty well,
Sure.
I think, for the last month or so about how he's the front runner. It's his to go, and I don't know if that great season that he had, there's no doubting all the numbers, the stats, the touchdowns, the yards, the just playing all over the place. I was at that Wheeling Park Point Pleasant game, and I mean, from where I was standing, Cody Mitchell might have been the fourth best player on the field that Friday night. Again, that's not to say that he didn't have a great season, but just for me personally, I have a hard time saying that this guy is the best player in the state when you're playing with the other best players in the state,
Right.
and you're not standing out at all.
Yeah, I think starting off to, where you started, I was talking to Sean Ryan from the Wheeling paper Saturday in New Martinsville at the Magnolia Moorfield game, and I made the comment that at first I said I couldn't remember, and then I said 2008. The last year that we got this late into the playoffs without the Kennedy picture being really any clearer than it was when we started. And that year, Will Cole from Bluefield won it, with Aaron Dobson from South Charleston finishing second. That coincidentally was also the only time since 1989 that a Kennedy winner didn't make the semifinals. So take that for what it is. But I kind of agree with you. I mean, when you see somebody go up against a team, which obviously is the best competition they faced, and doesn't measure up to individuals on that opposition, I don't think you can keep them in the same spot. I made the statement last week that I had already submitted my ballot. People went ape on me. Fair enough. I had Mitchell at number one, and Reese Donahue from Cabell Midland number two at that point, and can't remember the third. Pratt. I had Tyree Pratt from Capitol at number three. All right? But the thing is, it's not like Election Day. You can revise your ballot, thankfully. And,
The deadline, I believe, is about 24 hours from now, when we're recording this on Wednesday. So,
exactly.
People very well still be making up their minds about this. That's how down to the wire I think it's going to go.
Exactly. I mean, and my ballot now has, and I'm not changing this. It's done. It's over with for me. I voted Tyree Pratt number one. I've got Savion Johnson from Wheeling Park number two, and Cody Mitchell at three.
And I think there's going to be a lot of that because, I mean, like we said, Mitchell by all accounts, did not have a great game against Wheeling Park. And those Wheeling Park guys, I mean, you kind of pick your poison with them. Savion Johnson had an outstanding game against Point Pleasant. Elijah Bell showed maybe on the biggest stage that he's had so far this season, state semifinals. He had a crazy good game. Cross Wilkinson, the quarterback from Wheeling Park. There was players all over standing out in that game. And then you get in the other AAA semifinal, and Tyree Pratt, all he does is just rip the consensus number one team in the state to shreds on their home field after beating Martinsburg pretty much, I don't want to say by himself, but if Tyree Pratt's not in that game, Capital loses by at least 14, maybe more than that against Martinsburg. So, I mean, like we said, it's just been crazy open how it's been, and nothing would shock me. I think with the season that Mitchell had, there's going to be a lot of people that are just like, well, so what? So what happened against Wheeling Park? We're still, 50 touchdowns, 52. I think it ended up being thousands of yards. He's the guy. And then there's other people who are going to say, well, look what Pratt's done in the last 3 weeks when it's really mattered. I think those are probably the two favorites, but I have no idea. I mean, it could be anybody. It could be Savion Johnson. It could be Elijah Bell. It could be Mitchell or Pratt. I think Jones Wright from Robert C. Birds is gonna get some love. I think it could be any Luke Presley from Tulsa. I think is going to get some love. Maybe Bonamico from Bridgeport. So you could see. I mean, there could be anywhere from
McDonald get a vote anywhere.
Yeah,
probably. I mean, there could be as many as, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 people that receive votes in this, and I have no idea what the record for that would be. But I've got to think it's going to be as spread out maybe as it's been in some time. Yeah.
What's your take on that? I mean, because you've seen some people I haven't seen.
Yeah, and you guys have seen people like. I was telling Tom earlier, I might have to revise mine too because I haven't seen Wheeling Park,
right.
And I didn't see that game. I've seen Cody Mitchell twice, and he was outstanding both times I saw him. To be, talking to Donnie Mays and Brad Dingus yesterday, both of them, one of the first things they said about Park was their defensive front. Now, in that game, I would ask you guys, was it more of Mitchell not having anywhere to run at all when he got the ball, or was it more? I mean,
It seemed like because the Point got the ball first, and they got a little thing going. They had a couple first downs, and then they kind of got away from what they were doing. I think it might have tried to throw a screen pass or short little routes, and it didn't work. And they got in like a third and some yard situation, and ended up having a punt. Wheeling Park goes right down the field and scores, and it was kind of game one from that point. And it really seemed like once they got down, though, there wasn't a whole lot of room to be had, but. They had some success when they went to it. There just wasn't, that defensive front is really, really good. It wasn't a matter of, Cody Mitchell had a bad game because Cody Mitchell's not a good player. Wheeling Park made him have a bad game.
And see, I think that I'm going to subscribe to the season that Mitchell had and probably vote him number one because I don't think you can win the Kennedy in a game, and I don't think you should be able to lose it in one game.
That's
either.
fair.
The interesting thing to me is going to be how many votes Savion Johnson and Elijah Bell take from each other.
Yeah.
Because I think we were talking also, I don't think many people are going to have them both on their ballot. I mean, it's going to happen every now and then, but that kind of hurts both of them, I think. And I think it's between Mitchell and Pratt now. I think, like you guys said, Pratt the last couple of weeks has probably played his best football of the year, right when it
maybe
matters.
of his career.
Yeah, probably. Probably
outside of that state championship game last year, but that's.
So I think it's probably between Mitchell and Pratt, if I had to guess.
You know what area I think is going to come into play big time in the voting is the Eastern Panhandle.
Yeah.
This year, because Martinsburg doesn't have a guy, other than Christian Johnson over there. And like you said, Corey McDonald at East Hardy or Will Schoonover at Moorfield, they don't have a big school guy.
Yeah.
So what those papers, other than, say, the Moorfield Examiner, who we kind of predict how's that going to go, how those, like the Martinsburg Journal people and so forth like that, they vote, might tell the tale here.
Yeah, that's a good point.
All right, we'll table the Kennedy discussion. When is that going to come out? Do you know the date? Off the top of your head?
Usually, it's the last Sunday of the year. It's right around Christmas. Yeah.
So, but the voting, like we said, it ends tomorrow. So,
I also had Jones Wright on my ballot too, simply because he's the best offensive football player I saw this year.
Gotcha.
And that's all you can do, really. Especially when it's wide open, is judge who you've seen. So.
but like you're saying, last Sunday of the year, typically.
Yeah.
All right, so look for that to be the worst kept secret of December 2015, starting this weekend in Wheeling, and that's where that's a good segue because we're going to jump right into the games, what everybody's really, really excited about, and we'll go through them, big school to small school, like we've done this all year, and AAA. I mean, we've talked about it off the air pretty much since the Capital game ended on Saturday afternoon. I mean, this is we haven't had this in a while with Martinsburg's run of dominance and then South Charleston kind of coming out of nowhere. There's no underdog story here. There's no little guy, David versus Goliath thing. These are two heavyweights going toe-to-toe. Got lots of tradition on both sides, skill all over the field, and maybe the two most skilled teams as far as talent at the athletic positions there. I think it's going to be a fantastic game. Like I said, the matchups all over. You've got wide receivers and Crunchy Bays and Kerry Martin, and all those guys from Capital. We mentioned Elijah Bell, Coles. Wheeling Park's got guys that can throw it around. Running back Silas Nazario has been one of the more consistent, fast kids around here. I don't know. He's had at least maybe 8 or 9 touchdowns taken back on penalties this year.
Yeah.
A lot of them long. So I mean, you throw those numbers and stats in there, and Silas is probably right there among the leaders in the state. But you don't, so he's not. But that doesn't mean the ability's not there. You know, both of these offensive and defensive fronts have been among the best in the state all season long. I thought Capitals kind of slipped a little bit during the season, but you saw what they did against Cabell Midland last week. Just whipped the Knights all over the place. And until Saturday, a lot of people were saying that same thing about Cabell Midland, is maybe they've got the best guys along the offensive and defensive fronts. And then you got the quarterbacks, and I think that's kind of where the contrast really is in this game. You've got from Capital, Tyree Pratt, of course, we've talked a lot about him. 4-year starter for the Cougars, MSAC's all-time leader in wins. Yeah, you've heard and seen stuff on Twitter that he might be the state's all-time leader in wins. I don't know how true that is, but he's got them. But he's got a bunch of them, though.
Yeah.
He's got a state title ring already. He's played in umpteen playoff games to this point. This will be his second state championship game. On the other side, you got the sophomore from Wheeling Park, Cross Wilkinson, who just looked fantastic in that game last week. Talking to Rick, he looked great the week before against South Charleston. You know, he's kind of the up-and-comer as far as, quarterbacks on the scene in the state, but I don't know where you find the difference between these two teams, because they do a lot of things very similarly, and they're very, very good at them.
I think I was sitting here trying to think of the last time we had a matchup that was this good, that we knew was this good going, and we thought that was this good. The Huntington-Martinsburg game was real good. Honestly, a lot of Huntington outgained them in that game. Only lost because of a block punt that went for a safety. But I think going into that, more people expected Martinsburg to win.
Yeah, Huntington was still a decided underdog in that.
Yeah, and so we've had instances like that, some really good games, but I don't know. Going back to
maybe that Nitro Morgantown with
Nitro.
I'm trying to.
Culbertsons?
Yeah, the Culbertsons.
Yeah.
And lost in overtime to Morgantown.
That might have been the last time we had a matchup this interesting, I think.
In AAA.
In AAA, yeah, that's only what I'm referring to right now. I'm interested to see how Capital secondary handles a really accurate, really strong-armed drop-back passer.
Those receivers are big too.
Yeah.
They're not like little fast guys. I mean, these are big bodies moving around, jumping, running. It's going to be, they're tough to defend.
And to me, I'm still trying to figure out how Brook beat Park at the Island.
That one's kind of been a surprise to me.
I don't have that game film. I mean, I'm sure Carp's looking at it, but and trying to figure out what to do. But I know that Brook has some big dudes that are receiver / corners, kind of like that. So that could have been part of the equation. And they're definitely tough up front, so they could, match up with Park's running game. I love this matchup. I don't know. I mean, I figure make picks at some point maybe, but
maybe.
I might make up my mind in the next 5 minutes because I don't know yet.
I still don't either.
I think the big wild card here is Silas Nazario's health.
Yeah.
A healthy Savion Johnson and a healthy Elijah Bell, that creates a lot of problems on what you try to take away and what you don't. Nazario's not there, then it's pretty much 100% focus on Pratt, whether he just tries to run it or throw it. That could be a big difference in this game, I think.
And oh, by the way, every person in the Northern Panhandle will be in Wheeling Island Stadium on Saturday afternoon. And they might stay Saturday night for that Class A game. It's going to be obviously a lot of blue in the stands with Capital and Wheeling Park both having blue, but a lot of Park people are going to be on the island. I've heard that was a Capital John Marshall game thrown out as the example of the home team.
Yeah, the 96 game where John Marshall beat Capital.
Quote-unquote home team, the Northern Panhandle team in AAA. Historically, since it's been in Wheeling, hasn't been there a whole lot. So, interested to see what the crowd's going to be like. Something I heard someone bring up earlier, too, something to keep an eye on. It seems like in these big games like that, there's always Capital comes up with a wrinkle. Last year it was you saw Kayshawn Haley really play defense
for the first time. Really,
I mean, he had been there on and off for a play here or there. His senior year, prior to that, he played a lot more on defense. Senior year, he didn't do it so much. But in that game last year, it was pretty much line up as an end or a linebacker or whatever. Just get on the line and chase Kentrey Greer around all day, and that's what he did. And South Charleston had nothing for it. So I'm interested.
4.5 sacks or something.
I'm interested to see if there's a little wrinkle Capital has. I have no idea what it would be, but But with the personnel they have, I mean, Park's got some options there, and vice versa. Wheeling Park's got a lot of kids that can play too. So maybe that's a two-way thing. Moving on to Double A though, again another great matchup I think as Bridgeport goes for its third consecutive Double A state title, and I think the first one wasn't really so much a surprise. I know that they were not the favorite in that game against Wayne in the snow 2 years ago that we were actually talking about a little bit earlier. But it was, they weren't supposed to win, but people weren't stunned when they won that game. I think people would be stunned if Tulsa won this game this weekend, but this might be as vulnerable as Bridgeport's been through this whole run. They have not been playing their best football through the playoffs. They've been plagued by turnovers. I know you were at that game last week, said Fairmont Senior really got back into that game through the air, just ate Bridgeport's secondary up. Tulsa's not going to throw it around a whole bunch. I mean, these two teams, it might be an hour and a half, hour and 15-minute game the way they run the ball. But, we had the article earlier in the week about how Bridgeport's expecting a hard-nosed effort from Tulsa. And Luke Presley, we've kind of been singing his praises a little louder the last few weeks with what he's done in the playoffs. I think he's a big X factor in this game. I'm just having a real hard time to keep doubting Tulsa. I know Bridgeport is the favorite, and that's who we've been picking all year long, and rightfully so, I think. But, man, I'm having some doubt creep in just in me trying to figure this one out the last couple of days as you start to think about it.
What do you think? Josh Nicewarner has said this, acknowledged that really they're not playing as well offensively lately.
Right.
But their last two games have been against Fairmont Senior and Robert C. Byrd, teams that they're familiar with and that they've already played in the regular season, so they've had time to adjust. Do you think that Bridgeport is not hitting on all cylinders, or the teams in the last 2 weeks just know them that well?
Well, he told me that they're not finishing blocks is the big problem. It's up front
Really?
is where they're getting beat. Another thing to keep in mind in this game, and like you said, I was there last week, both Bonamico and Tonkery spent time on the turf last week. They were both injured. Now, I think Bonamico came back. I don't think Tonkery did. I'm sure he's going to play, but they look a little bit beat up, really. And, early in the year, he was talking about conditioning and how concerned he was in these blowouts because, and then, of course, they had the tie with Park and they get to play that whole game. And I'm wondering, as this season's stretching out, and, I mean, now they're having to play 4 quarters, if that's not wearing down a little bit on Bridgeport.
I've wondered the same things, and at the same time, I wonder about Tulsa having not been in the situation, since 06, and going up there, and a completely different coaching regime too, and Bridgeport been there for the last 2 years and everything, just comfort level. I think that if Bridgeport comes out and gets an early score and makes a stop, I think it might be over quick. But Nicewarner also did say anybody that thinks that this is going to be easy is sadly mistaken. So
what concerns me for Tulsa is what they do on offense feeds right into Bridgeport's strength on defense.
That's true.
Fairmont went nowhere on the ground last week. It was all in the air. And if Tulsa, it would really be hard for me to imagine Tulsa lining up and driving it down Bridgeport's throat all day. I just can't see that happening. So that's why I like Bridgeport this week.
I think another thing to consider in this game that we haven't really talked about is, we've mentioned what kind of weapon that Luke Presley is on offense for Tulsa, but he might be better on defense. I mean, you see some of the videos that I think the Tulsa football Twitter account puts out. They've got a real good, a quality camera that puts out nice HD video, and they've just got highlights on highlights on highlights of this kid, and he is all over the place on defense. And I don't know that Bridgeport's seen a player of that individual caliber on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah.
Certainly not this season. Maybe since a guy like Mason Hodge a couple years ago from Wayne, and that's lofty territory to be throwing a name around with. But Presley's been that good this year, so I think you don't see the star power in Double A games quite like this with Presley and Tonkery and Bonamico, and I think Josh Nicewarner is starting to kind of get into that category too.
Yeah,
I mean, he's the coach of this team that's been in there every year, and so
people become familiar with him definitely.
Yeah. I mean, the more you play until the first weekend of December enough times, and people start to remember who you are.
One more thing that might be telling about what I mentioned earlier about Bridgeport being beaten up a little bit. Spurlock was second on their team in carries last week. That I've seen him 4 times, and he's usually maybe 4 or 5,
Yeah.
at the most 6 carries a game, and I think he had 12 to 14 against Fairmont.
Huh.
So
I know. Josh also told me that the brothers, the two brothers on Fairmont's
Stills?
the
Stills,
Stills
oh, yeah,
brothers.
they tore us. They're great
He
players.
said that he said those two are as good as
They
anybody
are.
he's seen in the state.
they are.
So
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, I've heard good things about those kids. I guess we'll leave Double A alone there. And maybe, like you said, maybe we'll get to some picks here in a little bit if we can make up our minds between now and the end of the show. Last game we got to go over, of course, Class A, number 1 Magnolia, number 2 East Hardy, the only 1-2 matchup
yeah,
in the whole bunch. Just again, interesting games in all three. Different reasons though. I think this one's interesting because nobody in Class A really throws the ball around like East Hardy does with McDonald at quarterback. I mean, you covered that game last week too, and said they didn't make any real secrets about it. They were going to throw the ball, and they threw it all over St. Mary's. Now St. Mary's turning the ball over 7 times had a lot to do with that lopsided score, but if Magnolia can slow that passing game down, I think they win this game pretty easily. But if East Hardy can move the ball through the air, it could be a long evening for them.
Big play passing game too. McDonald can miss on 3 in a row, and on 4th and 10 hit one for 60 at any time. So that takes a lot of disciplined defense is what's going to be needed out of Magnolia, I think, in this game. East Hardy is as unique of an offense as I've seen all year. I was telling Tom, I think they took over for the first time in the first half on St. Mary's 30-yard line and threw 4 bombs in the end zone.
yeah,
They threw
it's gonna be fun.
39 times they threw it, 15 times they ran it for minus 20 yards, and won a semifinal game by 17 points.
Say, how many sacks did they take in that?
There was, I think he got sacked 4 times. I think I told Derek, out of 15 attempts, 2 of them went for positive yardage. So it wasn't like it was like a huge one. It was a compounding snowball of negative yardage on the ground. And any yards they did get was off McDonald's scrambles. And he can move. If Magnolia can force him out of the pocket and get him moving, I think that's where the key is Magnolia's pass rush. They can't let him sit back there and wait for the Tharp kid who had 8 catches for 249 and 2 touchdowns in that game against St. Mary's. He's got some big weapons and fast weapons up there too.
You saw Magnolia last week.
Yeah.
That was, it was old time
game.
football.
Loved that.
Muddy field. Just I think a slobber knocker might be a word used to describe it.
It was,
maybe. But
mud is awesome, man.
how do you see Magnolia's temperament coming into this? Because we've mentioned in the past, and I know that the people at Magnolia are aware of this sort of stigma around.
Yeah, they're aware. Yeah.
It's the big one. What's Magnolia going to do? How do you think? Did they vanquish any of that with that semifinal win, or do you think that maybe that might still be creeping around?
I think, dude, not to be unfair, they're a lot like Cubs fans. They really are. They get to a point.
That does not bode well for Magnolia guys.
Well, let me go. They get to a point and they get there and they're like, okay, what's going to go wrong now? All right. They got over that hump in 2010, because they've been to not the Super 6, but the title game in 72, 81, 92, 93, nothing.
Bunch of
right?
times.
Yeah, a bunch of times with nothing. They had the 1 win in 64. But, they've seen so many things go wrong in the late rounds of the playoffs that they freak. And they got over that, and I think they exhaled a little bit.
Was it Wahama on blocked field goals?
Yeah,
extra
yeah.
points a couple years ago. That was,
And they had beaten East Hardy the week before that, too. And East Hardy gave them a headache. It was like a 1914 final, okay? So things tend to get a little uptight in New Martinsville as the playoffs go on. Now, that said, their pass rush and their defense against the run is outstanding, okay? And I talked to Josh Sims up in Parkersburg on Sunday, and he said, essentially, we're going to pin our ears back and go after them,
I think that's what they have to do.
Yeah. And, Brett Tharp, right?
Yeah,
Brett
Tharp.
He's
that's
6'3".
Yeah.
I saw St. Mary's earlier this year. Their DBs are short, okay? So I was wondering with him, I was like, do you put Kyle Ritz out there? Do you put some of your bigger guys out there? And he's like, we might not go that far, but the fact of the matter is Magnolia's DBs are bigger than St. Mary's.
East Hardy's he's not the only receiver there,
Right.
Because if you key on him, they've got a kid named Strauderman that had 100 yards and 2 touchdowns in that game. He's got 4 primary targets, and the thing I told you earlier, and I think the key of this game really, in addition to the pass rush, is if that pass rush forces McDonald into mistakes, because he throws some balls that aren't necessarily on target a lot, and
Gotcha.
St. Mary's just kind of wasn't there. But if you can be there when that pass comes and pick it off, that's a different game all of a sudden. But I think this game's high scoring. I don't know what you think.
I don't know. I don't have a feel for how the scoring will go, really. I'm interested to see Teddy Cassell, their linebacker. But, between Carter Seckman and Kyle Ritz
Yep.
and Hott and the leader Gerber kid, that front is just
Yeah.
really impressive for single A.
That's what they'll win it too if they win it.
I think so too. And if they keep the score, here's the thing. I think if they keep the score further down, I keep pointing right at your face, man. I'm sorry. I think a lower scoring game favors Magnolia,
too.
obviously.
We'll pick these things.
Yeah, we'll pick them here in a second. Of course, this is going to be one of maybe the last one we do for the season. We're kicking around the idea of doing one here in a couple weeks when the awards start rolling out, maybe right after the new year, and get the Kennedy Award in there. But we'll be off for a couple weeks with the holidays, and again, take time to thank the people at Adelphia Sports Bar and Grill in downtown Charleston that have been so kind to us this year, hosted us, fed us, giving us this great table and these waters every week, and just been wonderful.
Did I go
hosts.
through like water? Nice.
Funny how that works out. Of course, Adelphia's at 218 Capitol Street in the heart of downtown Charleston. God, I should have counted these things at one point this year because I keep saying there's a billion TVs. There's not a billion TVs, but there's a bunch.
There's a bunch.
Dozens, possibly. More than 1 dozen. How about that? And again, they've got great food, as we mentioned. You can do catering for all your holiday stuff. I believe they'll be open at 3 o'clock on Christmas Day if you want to get down here and watch some of the games.
There's
Have a
16
drink,
that I
grab
can
some
see.
wings or something like that. So, again, big thanks to Adelphia. Big thanks to our multimedia journalist, Lisa. How do you pronounce your last name? I don't think I've ever asked you.
Bernheim.
Lisa Bernheim. Been filming this thing for us the last couple weeks. She's relatively new to the Gazette Mail, doing a great job with the podcast. Shout out and thanks to her. And, of course, Christian Randolph, our photographer that filmed it for a while. Doug Imbrogno, Marcus Constantino, not with the paper anymore, but he was filming it at the beginning of the season. So it's been a labor of love from many
been a
people
cool year
that
doing
have
this.
got
It really
us
has.
in. And, of course, Rick Ryan's not here with us. He's been a big help. Sports editor Chuck McGill really made the whole thing happen with Adelphia. So lots of people to thank as we start to wrap things up for the season. I guess, guys, the last thing we'll do before we give out all the URLs and Twitter handles and stuff, we got to pick these things. What order you want to do them in? The order that the games are? Start with AA for the Friday night game, then go through.
Be fine.
So we give scores too.
Oh man,
Let's go. Out
I really didn't.
Let's go with a bang.
I really didn't.
Fine.
Want my Twitter feed to be full all weekend, but all right. In AA, I'm gonna go with Bridgeport, but I think it's gonna be close and not necessarily high scoring. I think mid-20s maybe. Say Bridgeport 24, Tulsa 17.
I'll go Bridgeport 27-12.
Man, that's right in my range. I was going to say 28-12, I swear. So I'll go 28-13 just to make it all different.
Oh
Bridgeport.
man, not going to be popular guys in Wayne County for the rest of the week. But hey, it's all for fun, guys. We're allowed to be wrong every now and then.
We're all the top.
Yep. All right, Friday night game out of the way. AAA. I mean, the big one. I still don't know. When do you guys want to go first with this? 'Cause I still.
I'll go first.
Okay, go ahead.
Wheeling Park 14-13.
All right.
Wheeling Park 26-20.
And I'm going to go with Capital 42-35. High scoring. All right, in Class A, of course, we mentioned the matchup between Magnolia and East Hardy, the strong defensive front of Magnolia against that passing attack from East Hardy. Again, I think Magnolia been the number one team all season for a reason. I think they get over whatever maybe psych out Cubs bad voodoo that you tried to put on them a little bit ago by mentioning them together, but I think they get past that. And I think the Cubs get past it next year. That's another podcast or maybe another website. But anyway, Magnolia, let's say 14-10.
I was thinking close to that. 14-8 Magnolia.
East Hardy 42-41.
Whoa.
I can see it.
Why not?
You stunned, you stunned me. I got nothing for you. Of course, like we mentioned at the end of every show, you can find all of our high school football coverage online at wvhuddle.com. We've got podcasts, obviously. We've got stories. We've got photo galleries. We've got video highlights. I mean, we've got, the Playoff Central where you've got everything together, links from every round of the playoffs, all the photo galleries from the playoffs, the playoff podcast, all of our games. I mean, it's all in one place right there on the website. Real easy to get to. We link to it on Twitter a couple times every day and Facebook. Real easy to find. Of course, on Twitter, we're at WV Huddle, and Facebook, it's WV Huddle. All of our non-high school football coverage at Gazmail Sports on Twitter. It's wvgazettemail.com/sports. What am I forgetting? Oh, and they're on Facebook too, Gazette Mail Sports. I mean, we're all over the place. This is Ryan Pritt, of course, our prep sports reporter. He's at rpritt. I'm at Tom Bragg Sports and at Gazmail DT. Rick Ryan's not here. He's at Rick Ryan WV. Ryan, you are not going to the Super Six?
I'm not.
Correct. You will be there. Rick Ryan, will be there. I will be there. Lisa Bernheim will be there. Christian Randall. I mean, we're going to have wall-to-wall coverage from Wheeling this weekend. We'll be all over the internet with it, so keep an eye out for that. Look, see what all we'll have where you need to go. And guys, for maybe the last time this season, I guess we'll sign off. It's been fun.
Definitely.
I think we might do one more this year, but we say that every year. So.
Went to the earliest preseason for outlook for 2016.
Anyway, I mean,
You never know.
Let's get crazy with it. Thanks everybody for watching this season. If we don't see you again, and if you see us up in Wheeling, come say hi. Bye.
See ya.
Yeah.